I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh boy.
You want me to start
Yeah,
us
I don't
off?
care, I like it.
The Tri-Creek School Corporation of Students, Staff, and Community endeavor to be
A recognized leader for high achievement,
and exceptional growth.
Innovative and equitable approaches built upon strong community pride,
And provide all students with well-rounded educational experiences to prepare for future successes.
Engaged to learn,
equipped to achieve,
empowered to succeed.
alrighty. Welcome, everybody. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
or not.
Anybody else? Alrighty. Go, Kevin. Alright. Public comment, we don't have anything for agenda items. Superintendent's report.
So I would like to first pass the mic to Dana Bogathy, who has an update on our Lake Prairie Elementary construction project. While she's pulling that up, perhaps we'll give the mic temporarily to Kevin Deal, who can give us an update from our e-learning day yesterday.
Yeah, so yesterday was one of our pre-planned e-learning days. Those have been added to our calendar as a part of discussion because professional development opportunities for our staff, especially when you get entire grade level teams together, departments together, is so rare. This is a humble plea to spread the word that subs are very much a need still at our district so that we can cover those types of opportunities. They are more few and far between than ever before. So we really value those days. And I just wanted to take a moment to kind of celebrate our building principals, along with building team leaders, department heads, assistant team leaders who came up with like really meaningful and engaging agendas throughout the course of the day yesterday. There is a sentiment that like when you have that time, the minutes are precious. And you want to make sure that you utilize them all to the most and that there's value added for the teachers that are participating in them throughout the day. So our team of administrative leaders throughout the district put together really great activities for both the morning and an afternoon session to support the teachers and hopefully meet their needs and help them to grow in a meaningful way. So just kudos to everybody that participated and additional celebration of how important those are as pre-scheduled days to offer that professional development. Thank you.
so Mr. Anderson asked that I give a update on our projects that are going on in the district, and we've been working on Lake Prairie Elementary since, well, in 2021, drawing up the plans, but in early 2022. So there's actually 3 projects going on there, so 3 different phases of that project. I gave you a little handout that has some history. We've got the new board members here, and scopes of each one of those projects are in here, but originally this project started out as HVAC replacement at Lake Prairie. We had a very aging system there. It was getting extremely difficult for us to replace anything. We were having some issues with the main board there, and you just can't get parts for it. It's 20 plus years going on there, and so things are just going obsolete there. We've been doing our HVAC renovations at each one of our buildings, starting back from when I started here in 2014 in Three Creeks. And probably even before, when Dr. Cleafish was here, they started some of those. So we've been hitting all of our buildings, and Lake Prairie was up for the next renovation. So at that time, we took out in January of 2022, we closed on bonds of $3.5 million for this project. The projects at Oak Hill and Three Creeks included additions, 4 classroom additions, and we did the same HVAC project with LED conversion in the lights inside. And those projects were in the $4 million range and 4.5, including the addition, the 4 classroom addition. So when we did this project in January of 2022, in March, when we bid this project, we were blown out of the water when just the HVAC, which is the chillers and the boilers, came back at over 4.5 million. So it blew our budget. We had 3.5 million to spend, and this really blew our budget. So we had to retool, refigure what we were gonna do. Meanwhile, in January, that's when all these ESSER dollars were funneling into these types of projects in other school districts. They were starting to they were just starting to do these projects where this was part of our facility plan. This was the next school. So many of these school districts were ordering these custom units, and it was taking a long time to get these units. So we pre-purchased the units ahead of time, knowing that it was going to be a hard time for us to get these, and it was going to be a long wait. So we pre-purchased the units, both the air handlers, the chillers, the boilers, and the air handlers. And then the bids came in really high for the installation and everything, so we had to retool that. So we changed that to just installation of the chillers and boilers and rebid that at that time. That came back at $864,000. So to give you an update of this phase one, we just went with phase one, and we decided to push the air handlers and the LED to a phase two. On the phase one right now, we've received the chiller units in November, and installation is ongoing. The pipe runs are just about done, and they hope to test the system in the early spring. So that'll be going on. So things are going great. Our boilers right now have been delayed. They were supposed to be here in August of 2022, and we were going to store them or at least get them installed if we could in that window from August to October before we turn them on, but that didn't happen. So right now they are actually delayed and expected to be delivered in March of 2023. So a couple months right now. So it's been delayed that long. Again, we pre-purchased this where other school districts haven't, and they're funding that with grant money that will expire too. So the boilers are a main concern. We couldn't do the boilers, so we're operating our boilers manually at that building right now, which is not the best because it doesn't allow for individual control of the rooms necessarily. You're on and you're off. So some rooms, unfortunately, are a little warmer than others, but it's what we had to do because we didn't get the new system. And it's just supply chain issues. So anticipated start date for once the boilers are delivered will be April 17th. And hopefully, if everything works out great, we will have this whole project wrapped up June 9th. Now again, next page there, we did phase two, where we bid out the installation of air handling units and CoolSense units. The CoolSense units it's a new technology that actually monitors the moisture in the air, and it uses that technology to bring in some outside air. It actually works on the outside air more and brings in a lot more air and does a better job of air turnover there. The really important thing that we wanted to go and why we went with these CoolSense units, and we've got them in Oak Hill and Three Creeks, is that it eliminates the condensing pans that you would have in individual classrooms where any kind of moisture in the air would be held up in that classroom. So you have potential for allergens up there. That's where you get a lot of your HVAC leaks in your classrooms as well. So this removes that, and you have no condensing pans or anything in the classrooms at all because it's monitoring that moisture in a different area, turning on some cooling coils to actually pull that out in a different area. So we bid this project, phase two, in November, and bids received and the board approved those for the installation at $2.785 million, and then we also accepted the alternate bid of the LED lighting and changing out the ceiling panels. This is important to do. It's the one building that we don't have on LED at the elementary level. You have the ceilings already open because we have to take all those condensing pans out, and we've got to put those CoolSense up there, so you might as well replace those ceiling panels and do the LED at the same time. So that was part of our plan. It's knocking another thing off of our facility needs list. So we should get the air handler units delivered February 7th, We'll store those at the high school in the athletic barn and keep Mrs. McCormick for that space there. By doing so, we don't have to pay for on-site storage and security and all that. We've got it on our property. It's written into the contract for Circle R to actually move those from the high school to the site, so it removes it from us completely. In both of these projects, we are taking the opportunity to reap the benefit of the NIPSCO rebate program. LED alone in this program here is going to give us about a $10,000 rebate. I don't have numbers on the chiller and boiler, but in the previous buildings, it was around $16,000 that we got in rebate. So those we should see that rebate money. Anticipated completion date would be the start of the 24th school year, provided we get our boilers delivered. So the final phase, the Lake Prairie Elementary 6th Classroom Addition. This is a separate bond issuance that closed on November 20th, 2022 for $5.8 million. This is an addition of 6 classrooms, meeting space, bathrooms, a new courtyard, and this all is on the southeast corner of the current building. We are out of space there and need classrooms, and this will help that situation. This will require us moving the basketball court, but I'll be able to show that to you. So our architects on there is VPS Architects from Evansville, and there's subs under there. We actually have 3 architects for the price of 1. So Leggett, Architects, and CSK are working on there. We also have Millie's Engineering working on this project. Completion date will be for the 24-25 school year. This also works in tandem with CSK and Skillman working with the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, IDEM, to get a special variance for us there because we're reaching the capacity of our mound system there and need expansion of that mound system. The school district has an agreement with the town and that's your last couple pages there, I included that agreement, to work on getting the sewer lanes out to the school. The mound system that we would have had to build would have been around $750,000 to $900,000, and that was in 2020. So that price, no doubt, has gone up. Our agreement with the town is the district's dedicated $1 million to go towards the almost $3 million project to get the sewer lines out there, which many residents will benefit from. So that's part of the contract as well, where CSK and Skillman Corp will work with IDEM to get the special variance so that we can pause the expansion of the mound system and be able to just work towards those sewer lines going out there. So we've been meeting weekly with VPS and the Leggett team. We've been working on classroom design. We're moving into the development phase where we're going to start taking a look at classroom colors, furniture, different materials and such, but we've got the design phase. Now, I'm going to show you a picture of what the outside of this looks like. We have since made a suggestion that that's a metal facade. We want brick around the bottom of it. So I just don't have a new rendering, but these are the renderings as of, when did we meet? Was it Tuesday? I think it was Tuesday.
Yeah, this is, they're 50% in, so what they do is they present this, get feedback, we gave them our feedback, so they go back and make adjustments.
Yes, but this is the outside, so it's going to have a sloped roof like that too, because we need that for drainage, and I think it's going to have a nice look on the facade, although it's on the back of the building, but still it's tying the building in well. To give you a quick, I don't know if this is easy enough to see here, it's a little dark, but you can see the outline, see where the basketball court is right here. That basketball court's gonna go a little bit south and line up over here. And this is the addition that we're talking about right here, in through here. That's where it is.
Yeah.
This is the current courtyard, and this would create another courtyard right here.
Is that all enclosed?
The courtyard,
Well,
or,
the classrooms are
Yes.
forming like an L.
let me show you, let me find the plans, sorry.
is they create a second courtyard.
Okay.
Here we go. Okay, so this whole section here, L-shaped right there. So starting right here, lining up, this is a meeting room. It goes classroom, classroom, and in between you've got a meeting room and you've got storage for shared for both sides of the classroom. You have new restrooms here. This is an exit out to that basketball and playground area, so the restrooms are accessible right there. You have classroom, again, shared spaces in between with meeting and storage. Classroom, meeting storage. So you got your 6 classrooms, a meeting room. Your courtyard's in the center here. We have another meeting room right here, a meeting room down here, and then we have a general classroom informal space, I guess. They've got benches and things that they can put in there too, so that they can do some pull-out services or go out there and just change up the pace a little bit in the hallway. We've gone so far to talk about what walls are technology, what exactly these classroom, what the casework's going to look like, but we're going to be moving into the colors and materials phase, like I said, next week on this. Anything else, Candy, that?
I would say when you start talking colors, we're going to need to bring Gibraltar into the conversation, because when we look at our district-wide branding and how that works, we want to make sure that one building doesn't look different because they're working with a different firm due to the consistency.
Can you scroll down a little bit? Okay. I was just looking at where the next,
okay.
where the next exit was, since you closed off that other
Okay.
exit with the,
So we have some things on here that we'd like to do for possible alternates that are set off to the side. Again, the project budget is 5.8 million, so my fingers are crossed, we'll see where this comes in. But we are looking in that courtyard area. We'd like to put some steps or seating in there somehow, cement seating or something like that. They've got some ideas. We're looking to put LVT flooring in the cafeteria. We don't have that right now. And then painting the exterior ephes that we've got around the building, consumer paint. So some of those things that are on our facility list that we'd like to add if we've got the opportunity to do it here.
I would like to point out a few things. In our strategic plan, fiscal well-being is our goal number 2. And we were very strategic and purposeful about saving money. And so as Dana talked, when we went out to bid and we got pricing information back and the whole supply chain, knowing that delivery wasn't going to be until further into the school year, we had 2 options. We could delay our ordering so that delivery would fall right in time with install, or we could take advantage of the pricing at that moment in time and figure out how to store the equipment on our campus. And so we did. So we had a cost savings there, maximizing the rebates. We did not install $450 mobile classrooms, and the whole LED lighting project, saving on labor costs to do it all at once, and the partnership with the town. What a lot of people don't realize is that we have to we're in the sewer business out there, and that's costly. Once we complete our project with the town, we're out of that business and out of that ongoing cost. So I think it's important to bring to light, we're looking at every opportunity of how we can save money.
When we placed that pre-purchase of that equipment, it was $364,000. 3 weeks later, 30% price increase. 30% on it.
That's crazy.
So we hit that window right when we needed to. Unfortunately, it's still on.
All right, thank you, Dana. And then I did put in the board packet of materials a correspondence letter from Dr. Dockweiler. Dr. Dockweiler is a graduate of Lowell High School back in the 1900s, and he spent a career in education, became a professor, and an author, and the board last fall issued him a Tri-Creek Proud Award. And so his letter is in your board documents, but the last paragraph, please convey my sincere appreciation to the board for this recognition. My memories of Lowell High School experiences will stay with me forever. The Proud Award is a great capstone for me. So I wanted to share that. And recently we had a visit from the state fire marshal, and Dana, correct me if I'm wrong, they were overall no major sightings and just some minor fixes. I think less than 15 little minor items and got
all
going.
the buildings did really well, and the state fire marshal said that this was not a normal school inspection. He didn't see the normal things that he's able to hit other districts with, let's say, and he was very impressed.
It's excellent.
That was a good thing.
Yeah.
And finally, I have a staff recognition piece that I would like to share with you via video as soon as it processes. Well, at 5 o'clock today when I tested this, it did the same thing. There's a slight delay. And
Click small on the screen.
yeah.
That's what
To
he's
save the day. There we go. And so,
Attention, hear all about it. Great schools, great staff. Hey, hey, hey. Attention, hear all about it. Great schools, great staff. Hey, hey, hey. Attention, hear all about it. Great schools,
That
great staff.
is Becky Blackman.
Attention, hear all about it. Great schools, great staff. Hey, hey, hey. So, Mrs. Blackman is an awesome teacher and an awesome colleague. She was loving to help her students and coworkers. We have worked together at several committees, and she's a great problem solver. She's always kind and always positive and leadership and loving style. All right. Yay! Blackman, I say hip hip, you say hooray.
Did you see that one little girl looking at you like?
You had to point that out. So, anyway, that concludes the superintendent's report and the staff recognition.
Thank you.
I love that you do that during the school day so the kids get to see it as well. It makes them proud of their teachers.
For sure.
Goes along.
It's fun.
I'm not gonna lie, when the volume came up and it went, I jumped. Alrighty. Board members report, anything?
Yes, I have one thing. I was, I guess, appointed to the Lowell Redevelopment Commission,
Excuse me.
along with my partner here. And,
On your agenda, this third one down, it says public participation. I think you skipped it.
Yeah, those are related agenda items, and we already went over it. There was no signups for it.
Wish you could circle back
Yeah, I
around.
signed up right here.
What's that? We have an open one at the end of the meeting as well.
Well, I wanted to, comment on the $95 million bond, I guess, that you were going to issue.
Is it on the
Well, that is an
agenda?
agenda item.
So save it for the end.
That's on the agenda.
That's not,
Approve the contract.
yeah.
That's not the bonds.
What's that?
The contracts are separate from the bonds. The bonds are not on the agenda, but you can speak about them at the end.
Go ahead.
okay, I was elected, or volunteered to serve on the Lowell Redevelopment Commission along with Mrs. Kimbrough here. And on Monday, we had our first meeting. It was more of an announcement than it was a formal meeting. They had some wonderful news for the community, and I'm sure most of you are aware of it. Through the Dean and Barbara White Foundation, they matched the monies that were already gathered for the Liberty Park improvements. So the Dean and Barbara White Foundation donated $3.5 million matching grant that matches the $3.5 million that the town had for the renovations at Liberty Park for a collective sum of $7 million. There are some drawings that are circulating from the town that are available if you'd like to look at them. And it looks like a wonderful venue. There was mention that there's going to be an orchestra pavilion along with some open space. And the town invited the school, when the time comes, to participate and utilize the facilities to promote our programs that go on in the school. There's also suggestions that they may end up having the car shows and other type of community events all at that venue. They are planning to rename the park from Liberty Park, rename it to the William R. Nassau Park. And that's in recognition of a longtime friend of Dean and Barbara, who was also a member of the foundation. And it's all good for the town of Lowell. I think it'll be wonderful when it's here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That's nice.
There's some other circulating materials for that. The project is supposed to start the fall of this year and be completed by 2025.
Is that all you got? Or you got? Okay. Anybody else? Alrighty, moving on. Under regular business consent items, number 1, approve the minutes on the board finance meeting held Thursday, January 12th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the Board of Finance meeting.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Number 2, approve the minutes of the regular meeting held Thursday, January 12th, 2023.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Personnel, approve the personnel report dated Thursday, January 26th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Alrighty. Number 1 there, approve the recommendation to create an intermediate school for grades 5, 6, beginning with the 24-25 school year.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations for the intermediate school for grades 5 and 6.
I will second that motion. However, I would like to add that I would like to see a board member on the committee that is selected to kind of develop and decide what's going to happen.
Are we ready for discussion?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So we actually talked this morning and said the same thing, Deborah.
And I would like to also say some things. I was actively involved in the construction of this building when it was designed and when it was built. I had my hands in everything. And originally, it was intended to accommodate 5th graders and 6th graders in separate, from the 7th and 8th graders. However, as a result of the lower enrollment, they kept things the way, that they were. And so this is a long time overdue, if you will. And I think we're good. And ultimately, it will save some of the capacity in each of the 3 elementary schools. So I think it's a win-win for everybody.
I'm excited for the opportunity that lies ahead. I think it's a really good opportunity for our students, for our staff. So excited to see what you guys do with it.
Do you have any recommendations on who might want, if this is approved, who would like to sit on that
I would like
committee?
to sit on that committee. My daughter would be the first to be in that 5th grade class that would come in. So I would like to have that opportunity to sit on the committee.
I support that.
I'm good with that. All right. All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. All righty. Business operations. Number 1, approve the overnight study trip for the Lowell High School manufacturing students to attend the Project Manufacturing Team Regional Competition at Southwestern Illinois College in Bellevue, Illinois, from February 21st to the 24th, 2023, to manufacture parts for the competition.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
There was a lot of effort that went into making that application. It's a big process, lots of questions to go through for the teachers to do overnight trips, out-of-town trips. So I have to commend the teachers for going out of their way to take the kids to these opportunities, because it's not easy for them on top of the rest of their responsibilities. So I think it's great.
Yep, it's awesome. All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Number 2, approve the sign license agreement with Lennar Homes of Indiana LLC.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion.
I'll second.
I have a second. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Everybody paid attention at the board member training, right? Because making a motion doesn't necessarily mean that you support it, right?
I'm not real crazy about putting signs up on school property. However, I understand clearly what Superintendent Anderson was intending to convey, and that is to reach out to the community and try to help open up our school district to others. So I'm okay with that. However, I do have a concern about the size and the physical location. I want to make sure that it doesn't obstruct vision on Holtz Road for any incoming or outgoing traffic. And since it's low to the ground, that's one concern that I have.
If the board decides to move forward with that, that certainly would be tested going in, coming out, to ensure that there's no safety issue. I did take the charge from the board and circled back around to Lennar and expressed that perhaps the school corporation might be taken advantage of, so to speak. Reference the cost of a billboard and the impact of the developments on the community, that the school system is impacted by that. They did take it under consideration for more than the $5,000 donation that was on the table. Unfortunately, they are not able to offer any more than the $5,000. Along with what Dr. Cleafish was talking about, philosophically for me, as part of our strategic plan, I believe in sowing good seed, and whether you see the good result of that either, initially or down the road, relationships are key. And so by establishing good positive relationships early, you don't know what possibilities there might be in the future. So that's something I would encourage you to consider. The second argument, so to speak, that I've heard is if we put a sign in the ground, then we're basically saying we support this business. And if it were a situation where there are other businesses competing, I would see that to be an issue, but in this circumstance, in the context, that's not the case. And so I guess I would rebuttal with, okay, we're supporting a business, and anytime that there's opportunity to support one another, you know, maybe we should seize that. So, I did circle back around on the board's behalf. Unfortunately, the 5,000 is what it is, and now I'm gonna back away from it and let you decide if this is something you wanna move forward with.
I definitely, don't agree with the term of the contract, especially at that price point. I think that, that kind of open-ended term of until the last home constructed, is conveyed could be a long length of time. And so I think for me, if I was going to get on board with it, I would like to see a set time limit. So whether that be a month, a year, number of days, I'd like to see a set time limit on it.
We are allowed, from what I read, to take it down at any time.
10-day written notice.
10 days.
Right, but still,
Yeah.
if in 3 months we find that it's not, we give them a 10-day notice and it comes down, and we still keep the money.
I mean, in good faith, we want to give a written notice in 5 days. That wouldn't be good.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that's what I'm.
I do appreciate the time that you put into going back and forth with them. But I know that as soon as that sign goes up, there's not gonna be much stopping Melissa Grotine that's down the street at Graythorne from coming knocking on the door asking if they can put a sign there too.
That's my.
I think that goes back to, yeah.
The neighborhood down the road, down Holtz Road. I think it puts us in the business of advertising, where we have a great opportunity for that with our athletic department and out on the football field and signs and things in our, programs.
Keep it going, sister.
So.
On the side of the new pool.
So I think that they have some opportunity maybe to come back to the proper avenues, for supporting our school and our programs. But I don't, for myself, they have signs everywhere right now. You can tell they're not really doing very, very much for them because of all the replacement all over with U-turns and arrows. In the, coming out of the cemetery. So I am not in support of this avenue of advertising because we have others that they could use.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what Nate was saying there with, we've never allowed it before, so. Anybody else?
Well, I'll tell you, on this particular item, as a superintendent, there'll be things that I bring to you as a recommendation that I would be passionate about and things that not passionate about. And, you know, if you decide not to move forward with this, there's no spilt milk here.
No, I was gonna say.
But I will continue to reach out to Lennar and say, hey, look, we would love to have a partnership with you, but this just isn't it.
Right.
I would support that. I would support that.
So you need to vote.
All right. All in favor by saying aye? All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion is denied.
That really is gonna.
That's teamwork, right?
Alrighty. Number 3, approve the contract with the Gibraltar Design for the $95 million bond insurance project.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Go ahead.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Can you explain? That's just for the design, you know.
Yeah, so Gibraltar is the architect firm. They would be in charge of architectural services. They work closely with the construction management. In the contract is the outline of the scope of work. That's everything that the $95 million bond issuance is for. They're the firm to design that and oversee the work.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, I do not, I have a long history in construction and school-related projects. I've not worked with Gibraltar in the past, but I've heard good things about them. I know a lot of these projects that are being discussed to take place, we're in talks, have been in discussions for many years, and to finally see some of these come to fruition is good, especially with some of the things that are going on in town for the future.
Yep. All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Number 4, approve the contract with Skillman Corporation for the construction management pertaining to the VPS and Gibraltar contracts.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would just like to say that I have a very, very long and very good relationship with Skillman Corporation. There's no doubt in my mind, if we have a management firm, a construction management firm, this would be the group I would want to have.
For sure. All right. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. All right, board policy. The first reading, revised policy 2105, mission of the corporation.
Yeah, so as we embark on our journey to update our board policy, a year ago, well, last school year, the board adopted the new strategic plan, which actually adopted the updated mission of the corporation. And so you see the previous policy language there, where this reading is a formality that we would bring back to the next board meeting for a second reading, and then a vote to affirm what was already voted upon in the strategic plan. So you can see the updated first reading. Tri-Creek School Corporation commits to engage all in relevant learning experiences, equip them with meaningful knowledge and skills, and empower them with the confidence to thrive.
All right. Thank you. All righty, athletics. Athletic Department 365 rule.
So we have Principal Patrick and Athletic Director McCormick here, who
Where you want us?
Up front.
Front and center.
Anywhere from?
oh, and Mrs. Kilmer is here in the
Do you want
house.
us up there now with them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and Mrs. Cruz.
Yeah.
It's a
Everyone.
I said there should be
party.
full.
I can't see from up there. Can I stay back here?
What?
I'm right here.
I'm considered.
She's like, hey, how you doing?
Her hands go flying.
While Angela gets geared, while Mrs. Patrick gets geared up, thanks for the opportunity to come in and share this with you. Might be a little bit redundant for Kyle and Deborah, but we've worked really hard to keep the middle school and the high school aligned with our philosophy concerning educating our kids. I think you'll see that when we get through the presentation tonight. You will find many corporations that when there's an athletic violation, it's just a standard, the athlete comes in, it was vaping, 25%, you're done for a year. It was alcohol and driving, 60%, you're done for the year. There are no formative methods put into place at all. We really drill down and attempt to educate our kids through decisions and mistakes that they made, and I think that'll be evident by the time we get through this.
So just to kind of begin, before we start, what we're going to go over is not just athletics. Roughly 2 years ago, I believe that it became an ECA policy for the code of conduct that extended to all clubs and extracurriculars that have a paid club sponsor. And so whether it be theater or academic teams, they all fall under the same code.
Our mission is up there, and it's the same for both schools, committed to a comprehensive athletic program. And a lot of this is our mission statement, but as Angela just mentioned, it's ECA's clubs that are brought into this now. And this is a recent development. It's always been just athletics, but now we've involved everybody across the spectrum, and it's been a really positive thing. But the key words in here that we continually strive to achieve excellence for all involved. At our core, we have education-based athletics, which is not just an IHSAA thing. We really believe the difference in high school athletics and high school programs is that educational component, where the community's involved, where academics are involved. All the bad things they find at higher levels and different levels,
We work very hard at our level to make sure what we offer is special. Here's some of them. We're not going to read you all of these. These are some of the things that would get a student athlete or an ECA participant before a council or before a hearing. And we'll describe what that hearing looks for you here in a minute. But these are obvious things. These are offenses that they would be suspended for at school, be in trouble at school for. There are also acts that happen outside of school that could involve an arrest, vandalism. It could be something that happens on another school property. So our parents sign off when our kids sign their codes of conduct and our ECA contracts that tell us we'll adhere to these conditions, and we will hold our kids responsible when there's a violation thereof.
I think probably the biggest, the next two, anytime we have an out-of-school suspension and the student is in an ECA or is an athlete, that is a code of conduct violation, which would also be a athletic or ECA violation, which would result in a hearing if it's the first violation. But at the high school, an in-school suspension, a student is simply not eligible to participate in any extracurricular for that day or attend as a spectator because they were in trouble, but this at the high school does not trigger an athletic violation.
So I'm going to go ahead and quickly describe what it looks like so you have a visual of what our hearings look like. If there is an out-of-school suspension or it would trigger the initial meeting at the high school, the student is responsible for coming in and reporting to either the sponsor or to me. We like that self-initiative. Once the administrator in charge will say, this is what you need to do next. You need to go meet with the athletic director or your club sponsor, whoever that is, talk to them about setting up a hearing. Once that happens at the high school, I'm referencing the high school right now because it's a little bit different at the middle school. As soon as that happens, they'll come in and they'll meet with me. We'll talk about what their offense was. And because we only schedule our hearings twice a month, if it's not something dangerous, threatens another student, something egregious, we will put them right back into practice, right back, not into participation, not back into competition, put them right back into practice. Part of that is we think it's the way to go, it's the good thing for kids. The other part of that is there are day limitations in high school sports and in middle school sports where if you sit out so many days, you have to make up a chunk of days. So it's a double penalty if we do it that way. So the athlete comes in, or forgive me, I'm gonna reference athletes only, but the athlete comes in, we talk about what happened, we see if there's any element of remorse there, and we talk through things. So that's the initial meeting, we set the hearing date. Once that, and their parents are contacted, we always give that athlete or that student an opportunity. We want them to tell their parents. I don't want to be the phone call. We think that's just part of adult responsibility, and we put it on them. So far, it's always happened that way. That chain hasn't been broken. There will be a day when I make that call and they have no idea what's going on. So far, it hasn't happened.
So
Go ahead.
probably, it's been a couple years, we've really established a schedule for these at the high school because we have the same committee that meets every year. It's the same teachers. So for planning purposes and also consistency, because we don't ever want to hear that, well, you rushed that hearing because that student has a game coming up and you wanted them to play. So we are very consistent with how these are scheduled and making sure that everything is outlined for the student, but also that way we can have the same counsel there for all of the hearings for consistency.
And then the second piece of the hearing, and the word hearing sounds pretty daunting, it's actually a meeting with the ECA council. We will not do a hearing unless a parent is present. We really feel it's important for that parent, even if they've grounded them for 14 years at home. We think that's really important for that parent to sit beside that student and support them. And we had a great situation this past week where the parent actually talked to the child and reinforced. It was educational for all of us, is all I will say. And the parents are a very integral part of that. The student sits with their parent in front of this group of 4 coaches, 2 admins, and our ECA representatives. And it's a very casual conversation, to be quite honest with you. We asked them to introduce themselves, ditto. and we ask what their offense is. I give no prior warning whatsoever. No one in that room knows what the offense was, whether it's ECA or athletic related. They come in, it's cold turkey. The athlete explains, the group around may ask questions. Sometimes we're pretty quiet in the morning and no one asks any questions, and I'm on an island asking all the questions. But here's where the educational component comes in. What was your thought process? What other options would you have had? What would you do differently the next time? Are you being negatively influenced by the peer group that you're running with? Is a question we almost always ask. And then we go on and we create an understanding that you get one hearing in high school. This is your opportunity. We are handing you a refusal skill that now you can say the next time your buddies say, hey, let's go do this, you can say, I got too much to lose. I've had my warning, I've learned my lesson, I'm not gonna make the same mistake again. And so this is where the educational component comes in with the kids through the hearing. And it's a case-by-case thing. I will tell you, and the parents often contact me afterwards. It's a very non-threatening meeting. We talk through the process. We let the parent talk. On behalf of the student, we let the parent ask us questions. Nobody is shut down. We really the process provides the opportunity. Here's one of the biggest parts about being educationally connected, We tell every student, we ask everybody in that room if they know any of the teachers sitting around that room. We go on to ask if they're familiar with the administrator in that room. And we give them those people as a reference if they find themselves in a jam again. One of these people in this room, we want to make sure you understand you can connect to. They're in my office, so they know where I live. They know where Mr. Bessich lives. They probably have one of those coaches as a teacher or a coach. So we instantly attach one of those people to them for future reference.
Just to add on there too, as a penalty or whatever the percentage that the student no longer can participate for whatever their sport, we also look at this as a way to give kids the opportunity to learn about what they did that was wrong. So we have a partnership with, you can talk about the nicotine,
These are
kids that are
fairly
vaping.
recent, yeah.
Yes.
We have two partnerships. Two partnerships that have been great. Again, rolling back to the education-based. We have a partnership with the local hospital when kids get caught vaping. As we all know, vaping is an epidemic. It's very hard to break away from it. And our kids actually go through a class with the hospital if they're caught vaping. Additionally, we'll continue to have them go through drug testing if it's a drug offense. You would think that that would be a bad thing. Our parents love it because they want to know. And so by us testing them regularly, it really helps them. And plus, if you know you're gonna get tested, you're a little bit less inclined to do it. And so by partnering with the hospital, and it's not just our athletes, we do this with our students as well, we offer it to our students. And the second one is, we haven't been able to develop this all the way through yet. One of our high school teachers has taken it upon themselves to build a diversity curriculum. And so our kids that have offenses that involve insulting others or degrading others or being offensive to others, they actually go through a program with one of our teachers. And so just another piece that we've been able to put in. There's some pretty mature content in there. It's gonna take us a while to really get it to where it can be as effective, but I know the middle school does things similar on their own level with that, so.
I think what's important to point out is that it was actually two teachers that are on the council that realized we keep seeing these repeat offenses for behavior that are related to diversity and things that like our kids are just missing the boat, that we could educate them and help them to see that it's okay to be different, and we all are different. And so those two teachers, one of them really took the lead on that and developed that. So we have had kids go through it. I think it's always evolving, which is what Patty said. It's not exactly where we want it because the resources change. But the teacher volunteered to do all of this because we saw it as a need based on the kids that were coming to the hearings.
Especially if it's a situation of racism or a racial slur. This program's been really beneficial in that area. And the other good thing is there's a parent there. And as we all know, in many situations, misunderstanding of racial situations is off an environment. I'm not pointing to that parent in particular, but it gives them an opportunity to know that they need to stand up and support broader thinking with their child. And so, again, just another opportunity to educate, and we've been very, very happy with what we're doing there. It's really not 2 days for us. When the student and parent leave, we talk about the situation right there. As the athletic director, I do not impart on the people in that room what my thoughts are. It's a council. I'm simply there if they have a question for me. I think that's really, really important. We do monitor what our past penalties have been. We really work very hard to stay aligned with that, but we also want to take every single situation as an individual situation. And we can look back at our data, and we've been extremely consistent. I think Angela actually put some of that in there. But to that parent, we talk to that student right away. I make our kids walk their parent to the door and hug them every time they leave. We're gonna leave that building with something good. So right away, we give them the feedback and let them know what their penalty reduction will be. And then our students obviously must, if it's a situation where that child is told, let's say it's an anger management issue, if we're told you must complete this much counseling, then we have to make sure that that happens before their suspension is released.
So we look at the data all the time and realize that after kind of looking at last year, we needed to make some changes. So previously, the policy was there were 3 violations. The first was, it says 365 until you have a hearing, and here's why. We will get kids that just don't want a hearing, and then decide 6 months later, I might go out for track, I might not. So we have to have something that says, like, request the hearing, which we give them every opportunity to do that. I don't know that we've really had any kids that actually end up 365 after the first, because they all come to meet with the council. Was the first violation. The second was then an automatic 365 from everything with a 6-month review that could be requested. And then at the third violation, it was that they were done for the rest of their high school career. But we changed that because we were seeing a lot, which we'll go through the data in just a second, but we were seeing a lot of behavior increases. So the first violation is the same, but we actually added another opportunity, so students do not actually get to a 365-day suspension until they get to a third violation. The second is a minimum of 50% from ECAs and athletics for 1 calendar year for all of the sports that they're a part of. I think when you look at this, it looks harsh, but I think when you actually look at our data, which we'll get to that part in a second, there's not that many violations, which I think is a really good thing. So, and I have this printed out, I'll give you guys all a copy, but we broke it down by alcohol, behavior, drugs, and then nicotine or vapes. And so you can see the orange, our behavior, the behavioral reasons that a student comes to a hearing are by far the highest. That could be anything from theft to a fight, anything that's behavior. So you can see from last school year, those were the highest, and that's when we really realized, like, maybe, there's a huge difference between a 9th grader and a junior in maturity. And so kids do need the opportunity, if they've made a mistake as a freshman, and maybe as a sophomore, by senior year, I mean, that's a long time to not be able to participate. So it was for that reason that we've made that change. But when you look, looking at 2018 to 2023, we've had 129 total violations, but only 12 of those kids have been a repeat offender. We've only had 1 student in that entire time that has not been able to participate in anything for the rest of their high school career. So, I mean, when you kind of break it down like that, I feel like it seems very harsh, but we don't have a lot of kids getting to the, number 2, number 3 violations. So.
Can you poke back to that slide before? Even though orange is my favorite color, it's my least favorite violation. But I think this, if you see nothing else, you'll realize that the behavior piece is the part that we have the most control of. Maybe not the alcohol, the drugs, the vaping, because those are often attached to something else. But the behavior component of misbehaving in school or outside of school or wherever that might be, we can have a very positive influence on that. And so that's why that educational piece that we keep hammering on really comes into play with the things that we're trying to do through the policy.
And then we did include middle school, so I don't know if you want to speak to your data just in the same space.
Yeah, so ours were just a little bit different. We had alcohol, drugs is in blue, so not very many of those offenses. Behavior also is, it encompasses all of those things, bullying type behavior, slurs, homophobic, language, those kinds of things, fighting, those all fall under behavior. And then we have some vaping and nicotine offenses, so. We had, what does that say, 82 total offenses since 2019. We had 9 students that have reoffended with a second violation, and of those we've had 5 that have had a third violation, so.
One of the big questions we get is about incoming 9th graders, and there is this clause in the handbook that says, in the event that there is a middle school suspension, it's not fulfilled, there would be a meeting with the principal and athletic director at the high school to discuss that. This is in here because we don't want kids in May to do something and then be able to go play football, for example, without having at least a conversation. So the bottom line is kids do come to the high school with a clean slate, but if a student just makes a really terrible decision in May, they at least, we re-review the situation. I can only think of one student that this has actually happened with, and he did some community service with John at the bus garage.
So clean buses, didn't we, John?
But,
Not really clean, but clean.
but we do believe in that clean slate at the high school, coming in that transition, especially because, they're just so different from middle school and high school. So the answer is yes, they do have a clean slate when they come to LHS.
Now, does that meeting happen at the end of the school year?
So with the one student that we had, it was a end of the school year, parents came in, yep.
And does that count as a first violation in the?
It does not,
Okay.
no.
But I guess the other thing I would add to that is we could have some situations where it could be a pretty intense, we have to make sure that if it's an anger issue or if they're selling drugs or something, we have to make sure, you can't just say, listen, come on in, we're gonna give you a clean slate. There has to be a precursor to that. And so when we say clean slate, by all reasonable attempts, we bring our kids in to the high school like it's a completely different situation, but we do have to weigh every situation carefully.
So there are just a few differences between the middle school and the high school policies. One of the differences is that any student that receives an in-school or out-of-school suspension at the middle school has to go to the ECA council. And the reason is because at the middle school, we use in-school suspension quite a bit because we don't want to send our kids home. We want them at school. They're younger. We want them to serve their consequence at school. So unless it's, there are some things that we give out-of-school suspensions for, battery, when they're being very offensive to another student, when they're disrespectful to a teacher. Some of those things we give out-of-school suspensions for, but I would say they're about half and half for in-school, out-of-school. And throughout the day, we check in with the students. We make sure they're working. We also try to provide some education, talk with them about the choices that they're making, things like that. So that is a difference between the high school and the middle school. There are 2 more differences.
So another difference, at the middle school level, we don't necessarily require our students to self-report. Honestly, they're really not quite there yet. We try to get them to advocate for themselves, but it's very difficult to even get them to just have a conversation with their coach about position work or playing time. So having them come in to self-report is just really we're not there, not a reality. So in those cases, when we do have a violation at the middle school, I'm briefed on that from our admins. I make that phone call to parents. Well, many times I'll be able to meet with the student ahead of time, but I make that phone call to the parent and schedule that hearing. We do not allow them to go back to any kind of participation until they have their hearing scheduled with us, so they meet. So we try to get them in right away. especially if they're in season.
So you guys don't set a calendar ahead of
No,
time?
We do not.
We schedule them within, like, as soon as
Days.
the parents could get in, usually within 2 or 3 days.
Yes.
So, we schedule those right away.
Because what happens if there's a violation during the summer?
Same thing, we've met over the summer many times. If we're close to the start of school, we've rolled that into a hearing first or second week. But yeah, that has happened. And we brought our committee in. So we have a 9-member ECA board hearing. We don't have necessarily the same people that sit in every single meeting, but it's from that 9-member board that we pull from.
And there's always the athletic director, an administrator, and then teachers and ECA, teachers that sponsor those different teams. So we just feel really, really strongly that, it's our responsibility to educate the students, and we take every opportunity to do so. We expect our athletes to, we hold them to a high level. We don't hold them to the same level of every other student. They are held to a higher level. They are wearing our Red Devil uniform. We have to put them on the bus to go to all over the state to represent us. And we want students that we know aren't going to go out and make, terrible decisions when they're, out at other schools and other locations. So we want them to represent us in a positive light. We know, they're going to make mistakes, but when we do that, we use it as an opportunity to teach them those refusal skills. A lot of times they've just not had those conversations. And so it really helps them to understand they have a support system here. You can come to any of us at any time, and we can help you through these difficult situations. And they do. They really do come to us when things come up in the future.
Thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. I am so thankful that it is not only punitive, that you do provide the educational component and get them to think about what they did and ways they can improve their habits. And this isn't a skill that's beneficial just for elementary, middle, and high school. It's a lifelong skill that will benefit them the rest of their lives. So kudos out to all of you and all the staff involved.
Thank you. Thank you.
Question for at the middle school there. So all in-school suspensions for athletes would be to a 365.
Correct.
Pending a hearing, yes.
Pending the hearing,
Okay.
yeah, right.
And then detentions, those aren't.
No.
No.
It would be like a 24/7.
Yeah.
Mrs. Patrick, can I get a printout of your entire presentation? Just so I can have it with my file.
Yeah.
Thanks.
If you get one for all of us.
Yeah, that would be it.
Yeah, can I just send you the PDF and you can send it out? Does that work?
Yeah,
Mhm.
perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Are there any, before they walk away, are there any concerns that you have so that they can at least hear them? They don't necessarily have to respond to them?
Yeah. Question, so prior to the hearing, so a student athlete gets, or ECA student gets in trouble, and then you have those set dates, or you guys have, whenever you guys do them there. That time off prior to that hearing, does that count towards that percentage?
Good question.
At both middle school and high school, does it that way?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's realistic that sometimes by the time, depending on what the sport is, the student could come to the hearing and they've already fulfilled the penalty because they've already missed 10%.
Right.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. So again, with that time missed before the meeting, why are we making them, what is the reason for making them miss that time prior to that meeting?
So it's a good question. At the middle school, we want to have the conversation with them and teach them how to behave differently. So something that they did was pretty, egregious enough to make them get an in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, whatever they're doing, we don't want them to repeat it. So we want to have that conversation with them and let them know, because we've had a case where a student did something wrong and then they did another something wrong that would have required them to to get to the second offense. This was 2 years ago. So they would have lost everything before we even had a chance to, talk to them
and educate them about, you know, all these things that we want them to know. So that's why we don't let them go right back to practice.
Right, to practice, right?
And to
And-
events.
Or events,
Or
yeah.
events, both. I mean,
Yeah.
they're missing the whole thing.
Right.
Competition.
Yeah, I guess not in high school though, because of the rules.
But you would want, so you're inquiring violation, continue to play and practice until the hearing?
I'm curious about what the reasoning is, and like
Okay.
she said, there's some reasoning there. I'm also, I keep hearing a lot about, you know, the education component of it, and the training, I guess, component of it. Some of the purpose of athletics, or the benefit of athletics, is having those kids that need a little extra, and saying, hey, you know what, why don't you go out for this event? Why don't you try this, to kind of channel that energy, especially at the middle school level. So then they do that, and then they go do something squirrely and get themselves in trouble because they're middle schoolers and they're troubled, right? So now all of a sudden, nope, now you're 365. Now this is penalized. Is there any way we can maybe, or maybe you are doing it, have that education component kind of happening prior for these kids to know that, you know, aside from the obvious fighting, obviously, or disrespect to teachers and things like that, these are some things that are not wise choices, and this is why you're in athletics, to be with these people.
Yeah, and
Can I
Kim can
speak to
talk to
that?
that, yeah, for
So
sure.
both of our schools were, actually met their requirements, we're an inside-out school. So we've done a lot of training with every single coach from varsity level down to a middle school volunteer within this program. So Inside Out is a program between the IHSAA and the Indianapolis Colts. We've done, this is probably our 6th year within the program. It's a book called Inside Out by Joe Ehrman. Every coach, unless they're new, has read, we've done a book study, read the book, and received intense training. And the message behind the book is to move outside of this win at all costs aspect of athletics, character education. So to get our kids, our coaches, our parents to understand that it's more than just about the X's and O's. And so we require our coaches to put in place in every single practice plan a character education skill, whether they're doing a kindness activity every single day or once a week, if they're moving in to teach on empathy the following week. Excuse me, but every single coach has a character education value, trait, skill worked into their practice plans. So they're doing that ahead of time to really, again, get our kids, front loaded with, what that right kind of behavior is that we want to see from them.
I would, sorry.
I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, building on that, last week or the week before, you had that presentation
Yes.
about the safe,
Yes.
the Sandy Hook program. That instills a lot of those qualities to the
Yes.
general population.
Right, and another thing that Ms. Kilmer does, and I know they do at the high school too, is they do a mandatory parent meeting where the students and the parents come before every sport, and they talk about, our expectation for our athletes, the kinds of things that get them into trouble, what they need. We talk about social media, like, you just need to stay off of it because it is awful, and that's what gets more kids in trouble. So she does that for every single sports season. So, they've heard it over, and then they sign the handbook that they understand, the expectations too. And they do a community service piece too. Every club does a community service project throughout their season.
I got this question. For punishments, like there's like a range obviously for each
There
different
is.
type of thing. So say those punishments, like you're 20%, 30%, whatever it is. Say you're kind of towards the end of that season, that student athlete's gonna miss the remainder of that season, because that's where it lands. Now say that doesn't, say it's a 30%, of their season, but there's only 20% of the season left. How does that,
It would roll to their next sport.
so if they don't play
And if
another
they
sport
don't do another
until the
sport, it
next
would be served in the very beginning of the next.
year?
When you think about 30%, that's pretty heavy. That would be a
Right.
pretty heavy hand for us.
What's the typical, like in a first?
15, 20, I would say most.
I
10,
think usually
15, 20.
carries- I mean, certain offenses carry more,
Right.
obviously.
Right.
It depends on the offense.
The first offense.
Well, I mean, either way, I guess the punishment, if they don't have enough
It wouldn't
left of the
exceed a
season.
year, is what I'm saying. Like,
So-
if it was at the end of wrestling,
Mhm.
and they don't do any other sport, which
Right.
doesn't happen very often.
Right.
If it was the end, we've had that situation,
Mhm.
and they've served 60%, let's say that they had 4 matches total,
Mhm.
and they only get 3 in at the end of the year, they would just serve the very first one. We don't let them pick and choose, get it done, get it over, you're
Of the
done.
following.
They almost always suddenly find another sport, that's the
Right.
strangest thing.
Is there ever consideration that, like, especially at the high school level, say, that particular person or that athlete was, excels and they're gonna miss sectionals and beyond, is there consideration that that's
The punishment outweighs
punishment enough?
No.
I think we
Like, does
could
that
get
hold
some
up?
really muddy and dangerous.
No.
Well-
Just like you would get
I just
accused
asking if
of
that-
rushing a hearing so the
Right.
kid could play on Friday night. We would run the same situation with, all right, we're gonna make sure that this is done before you play in a section. I mean,
Right.
the beauty of the way that we've been doing it, Kyle, is that it's very consistent regardless of what athlete or what ECA you're in. I mean, I can go back and I can show you every one that we've done for the last
Okay.
15 years, and it is extremely consistent, and
Okay.
rarely does it roll to a place where it has any influence at all on that next season, hardly ever. But we have situations where it could be an anger situation, that time is important, and here's the
For
other
sure.
piece of it, some seasons, golf, they're every night. I mean, they could have a 40% penalty, and that's 2 weeks. 40% in football, you're sitting most of the season, so, there's a lot of things, and I think that consistency has really been there for us all the way through.
Right. And then, so I guess at the high school level, whatever that team makes it, those add into it.
Yeah, like the
So you
sectional.
can't, like, if they only make the section, you can't count regionals and
Right,
state.
right.
I don't know how technical it is.
You're saying if they were suspended during the sectional?
No,
If they
I'm
were-
saying, like, obviously there's extra things that the team could have made, but if the team doesn't go
Right.
that far.
We don't count them just in
Okay.
case.
But whatever
if
the team makes-
advances, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, that would be a little different than it would be at the middle school because of
Right.
the state.
Yeah, but we do have tournaments like that in
Right.
some sports, so it's similar, yeah.
okay.
Any other outstanding
No,
cons-
yes, you can. I mean, I don't know if you can, what are the rules?
maybe at the end?
Yeah, for the public comment, can you save it for the public comment part at the end?
Are you guys, okay?
He's already said yes.
I guess for me, my question would be the difference between the in-school and out-of-school, and I know you spoke on it, but how many students are actually getting that in-school suspension at the middle school? And would that be the same as an in-school suspension at the high school, or would that be considered an out-of-school suspension at the high school? I guess just the difference in why that is and if that's consistent across the board.
I would say it's not consistent from middle school to high school. They don't give a lot of in-school suspensions, is that correct?
Our in-school suspension supervisor is only slated to do in-school suspension 2 days a week. We don't have a lot of, we try not to use it. I mean, we will, but please don't take it that we just put them out, because we don't do that. I mean, we try not to do any of it, obviously. But we would get a lot of kids who, unfortunately, if you're issued a detention and then you miss that, and you have another detention and you miss that, and now it's progressive discipline, we would have kids sitting in ISS because of refusal to serve anything, and so a half-day ISS would fill that eventually. That then would need to us, that wouldn't be a reason. But horseplay type things would get you an ISS, I guess. It depends. It's so hard. There's so many different scenarios. But while we do use it, it's just not. We try to keep them in class, just like I'm sure you do too.
And a high school kid can go home and do their work
Yeah.
and their studies. They're trained to do that.
Right.
a middle school kid needs some hovering.
Yeah.
Not all,
And that's where
but
I'm
it's
trying to put
beneficial
it.
for them to be in a suspension that's at school because a teacher can go down, they're
Right.
stuck and move them on. In the high school, I mean, we do that in high school too.
We have like a 2-hour detention. We use that a lot because that to us is no time then away from school. But, so that would be something we would use more frequently depending on what the offense is.
I feel like this is tough for the middle school specifically, because it's so behavior heavy. Because it gives the double punishment, right, situation for these kids that are generally making mistakes. And it also gives having the council, it gives the idea that there's an opportunity that maybe nothing will happen, or there's an opportunity that you're gonna get hit with the book. And I'm sure it probably feels that way maybe at the high school level too, but you do know a little bit more with high school athletics, yeah. But just the fact that, well, I'm gonna have this board and I'm gonna, even as a parent, I'm gonna convince them that this isn't that bad. And then it becomes maybe feeling like it's the parent against the council and that they need representation. And I feel like it just provides a lot of hopeful opportunity in what seems to be not really it's a pretty set way of doing it.
I can speak only from the high school standpoint that when, like, for example, if a student is suspended and when the principal makes the call to the parent to let them know about what happened, please come get your child, they come in and talk, we have a form that they give that says, like, because your child is an athlete, that you need to reach out to the athletic director, but we never say that there is no penalty. Like, I would hope that people don't walk into that thinking that's an option. It's more of, because you're an athlete and held to a higher standard, we're going to, the ECA council, you'll have the meeting and they'll talk to you about all of the things that we went through. But it's then up to them at that point, they make the decision on exactly what the punishment is. There is definitely something, but it's never conveyed that there won't be anything. You know what I mean? Like, we've always conveyed that there will be something, but it's just, this is our process for going about that. I'm not saying that some people don't get that impression, and maybe we can do a better job of how we word that when we're making those phone calls. Because I wouldn't want to give false hope either. That would, yeah.
And I have the conversation as soon as that athlete comes in also. Our situation is they're often expecting more punishment than they get. They hear 365 and then when we explain, that's only if you don't go to hearing, that whole process of educating their thought process.
It is a daunting.
Really,
Yes.
yeah, when you hear it, but it gets them in the door, Kate.
Do you
And I
feel
honestly,
like,
we've only had one kid not get a hearing, and they were senior and had 2 contests. That's the only one I can ever remember that didn't get a hearing.
do you feel like there should be some kind of consideration for modifying the program at the middle school level?
It almost seems a little stricter with
Yeah,
the
that's what I was
in-school
thinking.
aspect to it. And just knowing also the level of students that you're dealing with that. Like you said, you can't expect them to come self-report because they're just not there yet.
Right.
And middle school is a time of making silly mistakes for the most part. So I don't think it's something, on my personal opinion, it doesn't seem balanced. And we're trying to really encourage kids at that middle school age to get involved so that they don't continue to have, maybe interactions and things like that. And I definitely think it would be a deterrent for some of those kids that already don't want to be bothered by trouble, right? They want to start trouble, they don't want to be held accountable. And athletics and clubs is a way to kind of creep them into that, especially when it's their first opportunity in middle school.
Yeah, I also think that it does seem a little more strict than the high school. I have 2 middle school boys, and I know the things that they do, and I don't know that it's necessarily out of right or wrong, and just sometimes they just don't think, and it's afterward it can be as quick as a conversation for them to be like, oh yeah, that was not very smart.
And I think that's what the hearing does. I mean, for us, it probably does seem daunting, but for us, it is that educational piece, and a lot of times, I would say probably 80% of the time, we are hooking them up with one of our counselors, or one of the teachers, or one of their trusted adults, to do the extra educational piece or component, add it on to like their 20 or 30% or 10%, whatever it might be.
So are you thinking like not doing in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions, or adding another opportunity?
I don't know if there's
or-
an opportunity that could happen. So obviously at the high school, that in-school suspension, it punishes them for that day. Whereas you guys are saying it could be 2 or 3 days. So you're saying that if something happens on a Thursday or Friday, let's say Thursday, and that child gets punished, Friday is their in-school suspension, then they maybe missed something Thursday, something Friday, now something Saturday, Sunday, their hearing's not till Monday or Tuesday, they might miss Monday, and it was for a minor offense that got them to the in-school suspension that was probably maybe just a conversation of, like, that's not the best choice. I'm not saying something like drugs or alcohol or
Yeah,
fighting. Like,
yeah,
I'm
and
talking.
we don't give suspensions for minor things.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't. I mean, we try to keep them in school. We use after-school detentions, lunch detentions, those kinds of things. We have a lot of those.
I guess my question would
Yeah.
be, okay, so say someone has an in-school suspension, and you tell that, like, their hearing would come and that they would be told, like, okay, it's a 10%, right? But what if, in the course of waiting for their hearing, they miss 20%? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, what if, does it happen where they?
So you're talking if they're in season then?
Yeah.
Right? So if they're an in-season athlete and we can't get them in because of scheduling for 4 or 5 days, they're going back to practice. Because if they're out 5 days or more, then they have to start making up practices. So we would never let them miss that amount of time if
Okay.
it was a scheduling issue.
It seems to me, for the middle school, that first meeting, that first offense, aside from the majors, drugs, alcohol, fighting, whatever other major discipline issues you guys might come across, it seems like that first meeting should be a teaching moment, should be an opportunity to bring the parents in, but maybe shouldn't be so punitive, because we are trying to encourage involvement and proper decision making. Versus you just got an in-school suspension, which is probably your first time getting something like that. Oh my gosh, now I'm really in trouble. It's an in-school suspension. Now I have to go meet with this board of teachers and coaches and my parents, and I'm gonna miss out on all my sports. Forget this, I'm not doing this anymore. I just think, obviously, there's certain offenses that are really big, but then there's certain offenses that are not. And if that first meeting, and if it's about, teaching moments, even for the parents, they're new to this too, coming into the middle school. I think it's like that elementary aspect that we still want to hang on to a little bit by making the 5-6, to hold their hands a little bit more through the process. That's my recommendation.
So the first offense would be like a meeting with the administrator, maybe the athletic director, a conversation with us,
Right.
and like an opportunity, okay, the next,
So formalize.
whatever. So are you thinking in school or out of school, or are you?
I would assume that an out of school is gonna be
Like, that's
a
gonna be an
major
egregious offense,
Yeah.
right? I'm thinking like
She's saying
behavior.
the first ISS.
Yeah, like if it's a
Yeah.
behavior issue, right? Like if it's a true teaching moment, like if they've used a slur or something like that, where like, okay, that's a teaching moment. That's maybe you didn't even hear, the person who heard them say it didn't hear the 3 other kids that said it, and they said it as along with the other, I mean, they could
I get
be
you,
a
but
teaching.
that would never be an ISS.
Well, and that's what we don't.
Our admins are phenomenal with
Yeah.
that. They've dealt with probably that situation 5 or 6 times before they've made the ISS, but I get what you're saying.
Typically, but yeah, so, are you talking about for ISS? So ISS would go to follow this, an out-of-school suspension would follow like the high school. But if they got an in-school suspension, they could kind of get
A formal meeting.
the first one, and then if the second one might kick, like the second offense,
Something
not
like
And
second.
hopefully that,
Yeah.
gives that spirit enough
Mhm.
and that concern, and it brings that teaching moment that, hey, stop doing stupid things in the lunchroom. That's gonna get you in more trouble next time.
Right.
But they've never had, a lot of them haven't experienced that yet, and
Right.
so.
In your breakdown, so obviously you guys have a little bit more, now these, kids are a little different. In your breakdown of your violations, your second violation and your third violation, do you know off the top of your head, are these behavior violations, like fighting, alcohol, drugs, vaping? Like, what's typically your kids that go into like a second or third violation?
Sue? Those are older.
Okay.
So they
Um,
are, but I know for sure one off the top of my head was a fighting.
Okay.
Someone fought they had 2 fights within 4 or 5 days.
Okay.
Since I'm talking anyway, I just wanna add something. There is not that much differentiation between behaviors sometimes that we give ISS for versus OSS.
Right.
We have, most recently, within the last year, I would say, we've skewed what we're doing to try and keep kids in school. Because we realize if we give an out-of-school suspension, they're going home and playing video games, and they're not learning as much as when I stop and talk to them. Their learning teacher stops and talks to them. Their LA teacher stops and talks to them. Mrs. Cruzen stops and talks to them. And we're reinforcing, good decision-making, and we just would rather keep them in school. So that's why we've had an increase, I think, in the last year and a half. John and I counted them up last year at the end of the year, and we had a lot more ISS than we had previously, but we thought it was valuable. Those behaviors that they're displaying are somewhat the same. They're not more minor offenses many times for ISS. It's just that we would rather keep them in school where we can talk to them, where we can make sure they're doing their homework, and the parents have appreciated that very much. And we've said occasionally, they'll like that less. And so we kind of want them to learn from that rather than giving them a vacation day kind of. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
So it sounds like the middle school actually might be using in-school suspension, where at the high school, it potentially could have been an out-of-school suspension.
Yes.
Yes.
I think the other question for me is, do you find that when you have hearings that are triggered by the in-school suspension, that the consequence is less than when it is an out-of-school suspension? So let's say, do you find that, for illustration, it's 10% of season when it's an in-school, but when it's an out-of-school, it's 20%?
No. I don't think
Not
we
really,
could-
I think
no.
it's more by the offense.
By the offense, yeah.
Because it's not a clear cut, this is an in-school and this is an
Right.
out-of-school. Depends on the student and, kind of what's going on and.
Is it safe to assume that if it's an in-school suspension, then the offense naturally would be less severe, so resulting in a lesser consequence?
I don't think that's safe to assume.
Okay.
No, I would say no.
And maybe that's an angle that should be considered as well. If our concern is for the lesser severe offenses, going back to the education piece, so maybe it's not as severe as if it were.
Sometimes they're severe offenses, but like she said, we want them in school, so that we can teach them, because we know that what's going on, when they're at home. And their parents are working, they're alone, we just, a lot of times don't feel like that's very beneficial.
I think so much of the behaviors and things can be helped by being involved in clubs and athletics.
Oh, sure.
The
That's why-
bullying side of things.
We agree.
That's why we reduced that. Yeah.
Obviously, there's tons of reports about
For
that.
sure. Absolutely.
So, when those are things that are happening, behaviors that are happening in middle school environment, and we know that the answer to that is involvement in athletics and in clubs, then those first offenses, I really think, need that opportunity for the learning and the education piece with the parents, make it formal, but, still give them that opportunity to participate and be pulled in to hopefully alleviate any more issues going forward, because that's the whole point of having these clubs and athletics. To give these kids some groups to belong in, to be a part of, to excel, to feel success and confidence. And I think you can see a huge, improvement from that. So knowing off the bat, if I mess up, that I I'm not immediately out, kind of takes away that defeatist attitude, right? I just think we need to give these younger kids a little bit more opportunity and room to bump. So looking at more opportunity, like that opportunity, like a second offense would trigger a hearing rather than a first offense. Yeah.
Well, the first offense
Unless
should
it's
still have a
egregious,
meeting.
maybe, yeah. Right.
You're saying establish a threshold within the IS.
Yeah.
Well, one of our guiding principles is a shared responsibility and focusing on solutions, and I think does the team feel like you've heard enough feedback from the board that you can go back and have conversation and take those concerns at hand, and who knows, maybe the outcome will become something that is potentially better for everybody.
Really appreciate you guys coming
Yeah,
and
definitely.
presenting to us. Thank you.
I even learned some more things from the last time. Was it?
I always learn something.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Alrighty, public comment not related to agenda items.
Can I please?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, my name is Gina Hathaway McCary, 198, or no, wait. I live in Austin Street. I heard a lot about what is happening to the offenders. What happens to the people with the victims? If it is a bullying issue, a slur, how do the administrators counsel them? Because it can be extremely impactful, and we shouldn't just be worried about our athletes. Our athletes, yes, I was a student athlete. Being held to a higher standard is definitely something that comes with that. But what about the people that are getting hurt in the process? How do you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we put in supportive measures to help our students that are the victim of anything, a racial slur, a fight, a battery, the other end of, verbal, whatever. So we put supportive measures in place to help those students. We have counselors that they meet with. We always, try to figure out what we can do to help those students.
Is that something that is taken into consideration when the meetings are held? Like
At the hearing?
Yeah, talking with, if it is a victim crime, concern, are the other kids or their parents, see victim statement, do they have a chance to give a victim statement and say, you really push some buttons and are really hurtful?
We've never done that at the athletic hearing, no. That's never been part of the athletic hearing. But when we are dealing with the consequence, the school consequence, we have a lot of restorative conferences and things like that with the students when it's appropriate.
Is that something the parents are involved with too?
Not typically, like the student wouldn't come and talk to the parent wouldn't come talk to another student. No, we've not done that.
We also have to follow, obviously, like confidentiality, and although the student who fought somebody else is going to say who they fought, we don't say their name.
No, and
You know what I mean? So,
I understand and I appreciate that part of it.
right,
I understand that's a thing. I just think, sometimes we push those kids aside. It seems like sometimes those kids are pushed aside because of what is mandated and required by the system.
I would say the high school does the same thing in terms of like looking at the counselor, making sure we're checking back in with those students, restorative measures, things like that, we put supports in place. Everything is situational, so, I can't give like a blanket response to everything, but I can tell you we look at everything individually and do that. And there's a lot of follow-up with those students to make sure from a one-on-one, how are things going, because we don't ever want them to feel like they just are, oh, well, this happened, we talked once and now we're done. There's always follow-up, whether it be with a counselor, whether it's an administrator, we always make sure that happens.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Thank you.
I'm a taxpayer, and I sat through a presentation at a club that I belong to, the Tri-Creek Republican Committee from school, from Mr. Andy Anderson and Dana, and there was another lady there, I don't see her. Anyway, I just came down to tell you that after the presentation, I wasn't familiar with all the things that you were talking about, but I came to the conclusion that you probably don't need to float that referendum because the money that the ESSER grant is issuing is plenty to cover the staff that was hired during COVID, and you get it until the end of 2024, is that right? After that, you should be able to let those people go, or you should probably give them a heads up ahead of time. And so that would eliminate the need for the referendum, because the state, even though you had money taken away from you from the tax cuts, you got more, you had increases in your basic grant, and also you got state funded tuitions. So that is my conclusion, and I'm gonna issue that opinion to people in West Creek and Eagle Creek Township. And the other thing that I did know about was the $95 million bond. Is it floated already? You already issued it? Is that right?
They haven't been issued. We held the public hearings.
November, December.
Yeah, November, I think it was. We held public hearings on it in November.
Well, I don't think you need that. Why do you need $95 million? You only get, I believe, $39 million in revenue, and you're gonna float a $95 million bond, and you already have debt. That doesn't sound like good management.
I was gonna say, so any of these questions regarding any of this stuff, Andy can reach out with you and schedule a meeting, and you can go through it all with him to get all kind of where we're at with everything and what the 95 million is, what we're planning on doing with everything like that with it.
Yeah, because I don't think you need it. Maybe you do need to borrow some more money for, it sounds like maybe it could piecemeal, but $95 million, what's that gonna do to our tax base? You already wanna do a referendum for operating, you're gonna have to come back for another one to pay the bond? Is that where you're going with that?
So we want to definitely give your questions due diligence and time to sort through.
Okay.
So I can call you and let's schedule time to get together, because
All right,
we want you to be thoroughly informed.
Your board members need to know that a lot, you're losing enrollment, and a lot of people that live out here, our kids are growing and they're retired, and they're on fixed income. And they live in nice houses, West Creek and Eagle Creek, and they don't wanna see that half of their tax bill that goes to the school, they don't wanna see that go up 25%. Is that right? You said it was gonna be 25%?
Of the school portion, that's the estimated amount.
Yes, because that's gonna be a big hit.
To the average homeowner in Tri-Creek, $250,000 home is $22 a month.
But when you did see that I said West Creek and Eagle Creek, those houses out there are $250,000 a lot.
Yeah.
So just so you know.
I'll give you a call.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Would you mind stating your name real quick for me?
My name's Lorraine Bank. This is one of my old business cards.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorraine.
And I don't have enough for everybody.
Yeah, you're
And he's
good.
got my email address, I guess.
All
Are you my neighbor? No, she said about.
You're in West Creek, or are you in Eagle
I
Creek?
mean, Eagle Creek, I'm their precinct committee person.
I'm in Eagle Creek.
And you, are you JR, yeah. You work for JR?
I'm his son.
Okay, I know JR almost got killed again one time. Let him tell you the story.
Yeehaw. And he strikes again.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alrighty. The next board meeting, will be Thursday, February 9th, 2023. Any other comments from the board?
So we have a presentation at the high school tomorrow, 8:45. If you would like to be a part of that, we'd love to have you. Just check in the back entrance and be in the media center by 8:45. And then we hope to do a facilities tour approximately 9:15 or shortly thereafter.
Breakfast at 7:30.
Where is breakfast?
Your place.
Oh,
No.
Don Delphante?
Yes. Drop the kids off and head to breakfast. Meeting adjourned.